So here are some valuable and sometimes surprising insights from psychology and behavioural economics you can use in change management. I try and use them all the time. Sometimes they're really surprising. But before we start off with the question, can people actually change? And in psychology, there's a concept called plaster versus plastic. And it was hotly debated for a long time. Are we like plaster that we set at a certain age and we can't change after that? Or are we like plastic where we can actually change? And it turns out, after much research and debate over the years, that we can actually change. And that's great for change management, because if we apply excellent change management, then we do have a chance of helping people make that personal decision to embrace, adopt and use new ways of working. But that wasn't clear for a long time. There used to be a thought that, after the age of 30 people can't change. But actually they can, it turns out. So that's a good start. So the first concept from psychology is it's always all about me. It's always all about you. It's always incredibly personal. And that means that, as we know, organisational change is the sum of individual changes, making personal decisions to embrace, adopt and use a new way of working. So overlook that at your peril. As Carl Jung said, even when I'm dealing with empirical data, I'm necessarily talking about myself. And so for me that means in change management to focus on the desire element in particular of why should I change, what's it for me to change, so really focus on that. The second one is the peak-end effect. I mentioned that in an earlier video. Ultimately it's about our perception of any experience, good or bad, is based on its peak and its end, and the rest of it, the average experience if you like, is generally discarded. It's a cognitive bias, and there's a Nobel Prize winner called Kahneman, and he found that to be the case. And so that means that no matter how rocky the road is in our change journey, it can't hurt to recognise that we can go a long way towards mitigating negative perceptions that surfaced along the way by including strong peaks and strong ends. Another one is the tragedy of the commons, and that's where individuals tend to act rationally in pursuing personal goals without fully considering that they might be disadvantageous to the system at a collective level. Typical example, during a heat wave, those people with air conditioners run them on maximum, but that in turn may cause the power grid to overload, meaning nobody's air conditions work. So for change management, it means that even though organisational goals may be laudable, may be desirable, not everyone will subscribe to them and change how they work for the common good. And again, that means we've got to be focused especially on what's in it for me, what's it to me personally to change. The fourth one is anchoring and confirmation bias, and this is about the human tendency to selectively seek information that supports our existing beliefs or initial impressions. And that's most potent with deeply held beliefs. So for me in change management, this is about primarily culture and communications. Deeply held beliefs about the way we do things around here will derail any change. So cultural analysis, cultural mitigation, especially through leaders, is particularly important to mitigate that one. Fifth one is loss aversion, and this is where as humans we tend to prefer avoiding losses to getting equivalent gains. In fact, studies have shown that losses are twice as consequential psychologically to gains, and it's made worse when there's a lot of change going on. So this can make us respond too quickly to the announcement of a shift in our way of working, or even defer our decisions to embrace, adopt and use that new way. So in change management we should try and mitigate that by ensuring people are crystal clear about what's in it for me again, what's it to me, driving the desire element of their ADKAR journey through change. And we should also employ excellent change management so that people are not overwhelmed by the volume of changes occurring. The sixth one is the endowment effect, and it turns out that people are more likely to keep an object when they already own it rather than acquire the same thing if they don't own it. And this relates to loss aversion, because giving up a well-established way of working can feel like a loss, and we as humans are loss averse. And it also highlights that the potential utility of a new way of working only stands for preferences rather than it being something from which preferences come. And that means that for change management, potential, the word potential stands for the future state. So for our work we've got to focus not only on the desire element of the change for individuals and groups, but also make sure that the potential associated with a change is so compelling that people attach more weight to it than they would to losing the old way of working. The seventh one is called the Bigness Bias, and it's based on the observation that people pay more attention to big numbers than small numbers. So in change management, we see this when end users get stuck due to many tactical changes occurring, and they might fail to appreciate how those tactical changes contribute to more significant strategic change. And we've got to make sure that people are not overwhelmed by change and have a clear picture of how the tactical changes contribute to the big picture, to the overall change. And I suggest we do this by ensuring active and visible sponsorship, excellent two-way communication, full engagement from people managers, and a strong focus on describing what's in it for me, what's it to me, i.e. the desire element of ADKAR again. Eighth one is overconfidence and ego traps. From a psychological point of view, it turns out that most people don't know how little they really know. And so when you combine that with anchoring and confirmation bias, it can become a potent source of resistance to change. We need to give people as much information as they need via their preferred channels when they need it. Senior leaders should supply the hi and why messages, while line managers give the what's in it for you, what's it to me messages, ultimately recognising that no one knows everything. The next one is priming, and that's based on the fact that for humans, exposure to one stimulus influences how a person responds to a later related stimulus. And it turns out that our brain is adapted to process information more readily after being exposed to something related. And we can use this in change management by developing an all-pervasive culture around the change in question, using multiple frequent and small stimuli related to the change. That might generate a propensity to process the change more readily as the project progresses. And research tells us that the use of images, strap lines, mission statements, posters, logos, images and branding are all a great way to achieve priming. And the final one is called social proofing, and this is where people assimilate to group beliefs, actions or ideas that they like or trust. And for me, that's another way of framing Everett Rogers' concept of watching whilst being watched, and that's at the heart of adoption. So make sure to stimulate identity with reference to the change. So that's my first top tips from psychology, more to come later, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helps.